Welcome to Reach the World ASAP. My name is Scott Griswold, and I'm really happy to be here in Laos with Lisa Isensee. We have been enjoying an incredible time together here in Laos, in Luang Prabang, on a mission trip. It's been fun to have you and your daughter, Catherine. And we hate to have it be ending and going home, but I know that God has given you a special mission back in the States that you've been a part of for a long time. And I want to have you share that to inspire people that they too can be involved in special things right in their own hometowns, reaching out. So God has given you a church planting ministry. Can you just share with us what that's like for you and your family? Sure.
First, I'll share a little funny story. I was doing a church planting seminar probably 2 years ago, and was teaching them about church planting and teaching these people that were coming. And towards the end of the week, one man said, "I just have something to say to you." He said, I don't want to give you a big head or anything, but he said, here I see you, and you're a mom of 5 kids. You homeschool those children, and yet you're doing these things for Jesus. He said, I ought to be able to do something. And I thought, sometimes that's our witness, is God wants to use each one of us. And sometimes the very things that we think might keep us from ministry can actually enhance our ministry. I know that Richard and I, my husband and I, both feel like church planting has been a blessing to our family. When we started out, moved back to Wisconsin, and I was, I think, 6 months pregnant with our son, and I was not planning to be involved in pastoral ministry, just help in a local church somewhere.
That's what you'd studied, was theology, right?
Yeah, and I pastored and then ran our youth camps in the Dakotas as well, and so I was planning to be home with our little ones, and when we moved to Wisconsin, we were about 40 minutes from the closest church, and it was a church where my husband had been baptized, and so we were excited about going back and ministering and, really being part of that church family. And we got involved, and it was a blessing, but we both kept feeling like there's something more, there's something different that God wants us to do. And as we as we prayed about that, as we were looking into that, we started noticing, we have to drive 40 minutes to a church. And then west of us, there wasn't a church, I think all the way to the Iowa border, which we were in the middle of the southern part of the middle of the state. So, we started seeing there's really this gap in the map of Adventist churches.
Which might be no problem for you to drive that far, but your neighbors aren't going to do that. There's
absolutely.
No way.
When we lived out in South Dakota, we drove, I think it was 95 miles, to church. And we would do that because we are committed to Jesus Christ and to the Seventh-day Adventist message. But no, our neighbors aren't going to come that far. So we began praying, and I remember my dad saying, boy, look at this map. And so we just started praying, for that area, but didn't really know how to start. I had never planted a church before. Wasn't, I'm home with my baby, And but we were praying and asking God, what is it you want us to do? Because we feel like we're supposed to be doing something different. We were at camp meeting that summer, and I remember clearly in the tent at the time, it was a big tent, and I remember clearly just the impression, okay, it's time to start a Bible study in your home.
Wow. And
I was so excited because we'd been praying for a while, just weren't really sure where to start or how to start. And I was so excited I could hardly wait till I got out, we got outside of the tent so I could tell Richard, I feel like this is what God's impressing us to do. And we got outside of the tent, and Richard turned to me and he said, Lisa, I know what we need to do. We need to start a Bible study in our home. And we said, look at how beautifully God leads. There's so many stories I could tell you about church planting. It has been a rich blessing. But I want to share a little bit about how it's blessed our family, and even how our family has blessed in church planting, because God loves families. He loves to use families. One of the stories that's kind of fun, we were doing video Bible studies. We just had a small core group. And these people were bringing video Bible studies to different ones in the community that had requested Bible study. Then we'd follow up and say, how was it? What, do you have any questions? And this one person said, the woman always takes it, but she just opens her door a crack, and she hands out she puts her hand out and grabs the Bible study and says thank you and shuts the door. Like that's as far as we've been able to get with her. And so we said, I said, well, let me come with you. Well, at the time, I was pastoring the church plant, but as a volunteer. It hadn't progressed. So I had whatever I did with my kids, and I had my little baby with me, probably in the sling. And
like we've been seeing in the Hill Tribes here, they just carried them everywhere they go.
Absolutely,
just
with their
part of your life, part of your ministry.
Yeah, and so I had her, in my arms, in my sling, and we went to knock at the door. And when the lady peeked through and she saw a baby, she opened her door wide open and said, "Come in, please come in." She was so excited to see this little baby and so excited to hold this child, and just so beautiful to see how God
exactly
uses
what
our
you're
children.
Talking about. All my children, that's what drew people when we were missionaries in Thailand and Cambodia. It's just so much. They want to see families. They're looking for a happy family. They don't have happy families. And they see someone they want to be drawn in, and they are drawn in.
Yeah.
And what a blessing comes back to our own families.
It's huge.
As they're touched by reaching out, because they can be. I love that part, because my daughter, my son, they could be telling the Bible story, part of the church service. They weren't just sitting in the pew watching everybody. The professionals do it all.
That's one of the best things about church planting.
Grow.
For our families. Another story that I share, because sometimes we as parents get hesitant. Like, are we doing enough for our kids? Is this what they need?
They're not able to be in a huge Pathfinder club, or they're not able to.
Right. And I remember one time in particular, God had impressed me that I was to do an evangelistic series there in our home church, this church plant. We had a couple series already by other people that had come in, but God impressed me. I'd never done an evangelistic series before. Was home with my two little ones. And I remember saying, thinking about it and calling my dad and saying, "Dad, can I use your evangelistic materials? Because I know you've worked these up, but I think I could do a similar style to yours." And he said, "Sure, honey, no problem." And because of that, I said, "Okay, God, I'll do this evangelistic series." And so we went forward. I hadn't gotten the materials from my dad yet, but we sent out the brochures and the flyers, and posters were up, and we had a place rented. And about the time I was going to go and pick up all these ready-made sermons from my dad, he called me and he said, "Honey, I've got some really bad news." And I said, "What's that, Dad?" And he said, my computer was having troubles, and we brought it to the place to repair it, and they took everything off, or so they thought. The only thing they didn't get off the computer was my evangelistic sermons.
Oh my.
And I remember getting off the phone with my dad and saying, "God, I know you called me to do this, but I didn't know I was going to have to start from scratch here." So I remember just telling him, "God, I know you've called me to this. I have no idea how I'm going to write." I think it was 22 sermons. It was a longer series. How am I going to do this? I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And just saying, "God, if you have called me to do this, you are going to have to provide. You are going to have to do this." And was able to find some materials that were, had some beautiful pictures and so on. But at least in my mind, logically, they didn't make any sense. I really had to take those and knew that at least for each one, I'd be spending a good, at least 3 hours, probably more than that. And so the very first time I sat down, the series is just at this point, just a month, maybe a few weeks away, or 3 weeks away. And I prayed to God. I got some things for my children to play with down at my feet. And I prayed to God, and I said, "God, you're going to have to come through here, because there's no way I can do this without you." And I sat down and I began to type and work on those. And after an hour, I realized my children were still just playing perfectly at my feet. I have good kids, great kids. I love them to death. But 2-year-olds and 4-year-olds don't always play perfectly together without, some adult interaction and some guidance and, even just simple things that they need some help with. And apart from they would stop and they'd show me something that they'd done and then give me a hug and go back to playing. They played, for 1 hour, for 2 hours, for 3 hours, for 4 hours, perfectly as I wrote the first sermon. Perfectly.
Wow.
Not a, it was amazing. And somewhere in that 4 hours, I realized, God, you are doing an amazing thing here. I don't know if you've sent the angels to play with my children and to, just to be there with them, but thank you. You have done this amazing thing for them. And this happened for all 22 sermons that I wrote.
Are you
Every
serious?
single one.
Wow,
They
that
played,
is a miracle.
By my feet,
That's
happily.
incredible.
And at one point in the series, it was Sunday morning. We didn't have a meeting that evening, and Anthony came exuberantly into our bed to cuddle Sunday morning. And I remember him saying, "Mama, do you have to work on your sermons today?" And my heart just kind of fell because I thought, this poor child, I've been spending all this time on my sermons. And I said, "No, honey, I don't have to today. I can just spend time with you." And he said, "Oh, I was kind of hoping it was a meeting tonight. I love those meetings."
Oh, wow. That's exciting. That's beautiful, Lisa.
God,
that's good.
Yeah, God really, He wants to use our families. He wants to use, whatever the circumstances of our life, and use us for ministry.
Amen.
And if I could tell people anything, I would say, realize that God has a special ministry for you. I don't know what it is. It's very different from person to person, but God has a special ministry for you. And ask Him what it is, and then ask Him to give you the ability to do it. And He will.
And don't wait until your children are perfect.
No, and don't wait till they're all grown up. Don't wait till, everything
Just step out. Let the Lord work in your family, on your family, but through your family too.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing.
Yeah.
If this has grabbed your heart today as it has mine, you know that God can use you too.
That's right.
So ask Jesus to show you what your ministry is. And if you'd like to get involved in church planting, don't hesitate to call us through ASAP Ministries. We can put you in touch with Lisa or other people who have been doing church planting, and you can find out it's not impossible. It may be hard and tough, but it is wonderfully rewarding.
Amen.
May God bless you as together let's reach the world ASAP.